In a recent interview on the All In Podcast Summit, Elon Musk was asked about the future of civilization, specifically the demise of Western civilization and what he thinks about it. And I want to share what he said and then tell you what I think about it, because I think, even though I'm a big Elon fan, this time he's wrong. So let's listen what he says and then think about it.
But there's other things too. There's the fact that the borders were totally opened to the point where Western culture, the social fabric started to come apart. And you see this especially in Europe, where they're, the indigenous cultures of the UK or France or Germany are starting to potentially be taken over by cultures of people who are brought in and aren't assimilating. You have crime, where, we have this case on social media right now, this young woman, Irina, who's just killed in a senseless way on a subway, which is horrific enough in and of itself. But then in addition to that, the elite media, just for whatever reason, just refused to cover it like it didn't exist. So you have this issue of crime that's not being addressed or even acknowledged.
And no acknowledgement of this. Like, it's almost like we're trying to deny the reality of the spiral and this,
So you have all these data points that seem to suggest that the West is suicidal or doesn't seem to want to defend itself or propagate itself. Look, I think everyone in this room thinks that life is awesome, right? I mean,
it's pretty great.
And I think
worth living.
Yeah. And when Alex Karp was here earlier today defending the West, that got some of the loudest applause at the conference. So I guess we probably don't really understand what's going on. We don't really.
What's your take, Elon? Because
what's your take on the suicide of the West?
Yeah. what's going on?
I'm very worried about it.
Yeah.
I'm very worried about it. I think there's let's just say that the actions of the West are indistinguishable from suicide. And look, at least in America, there's generally a sense of optimism. But when's the last time you talked to someone from Europe who lives in Europe who's optimistic?
Not for a while. Yeah. Decades.
Like even one. It's rare. So I think unless people have a sense of optimism and purpose about the future, suicide might be just what happens. Like having a child is an act of optimism about the future. So if you're not optimistic, So I think we need to maybe give people a sense of optimism and excitement about the future, and a belief that the future will be better than the past, and they'll be more interested in having kids.
Did religion play a role in the past, Elon, to kind of placate and make folks feel that way?
I think so. Nature abhors a vacuum, and if you take away religion, then I think you actually you get something in its place which is actually worse than what was there before. I mean, it's like destructive, basically. You get like the woke mind virus filling the hole that religion used to have, taking the place of religion. You get these dystopian de facto religions that are very, very self-destructive. So I think perhaps some sort of revival of religion, or at least what we need is some coherent philosophy that people can get excited about. I mean, for me, it's a philosophy of curiosity. I'm curious about the nature of the universe, and I want to go out there, and I want humanity to be out there exploring the stars, maybe meeting alien civilizations. Maybe in some cases we see the ruins of a long dead alien civilization, but they were very strong for 10 million years. The kind of stuff that you see in Star Trek, in a non-dystopian sci-fi book or movie or show. And so I have a philosophy of curiosity of like, I just want to know what's going on. And
so I find this super interesting, this discussion, because basically the All-In panel asked Elon, what do you think about the suicide of the West? What do you think about Europe opening its borders and basically replacing itself and let itself be overrun by people who really hate it and really hate everything we stand for. And similar things happening in America with a slightly different skew. And Elon basically said, well, when was the last time you met anyone optimistic from Europe? Well, Elon, you should pay more attention to Pioneer Lands. We have a lot of optimistic Europeans. We also have a lot of optimistic Americans, of course, and some optimistic Australians and Canadians. But I think they're actually right about this. I think Europe has to become more optimistic, but we can be the ones who are more optimistic in Pioneer Lands and can do great things. And I think we will get a lot of support, by the way, once we have a little momentum here from Elon and some others. Because here's the thing. This crowd that you're seeing there are some of the smartest people in America, the all-in guys, David Sachs, Chamath, Dave Friedberg, and then, of course, Elon, but also many others. They want to see Europe thrive, especially with the new Trump administration. You see J.D. Vance and also Trump deeply caring about Europe. They're deeply concerned about what's happening. And these are not just power games. From a power game perspective, they would behave very differently. They're actually trying to help Germany. They're trying to help the UK. I don't know if they're trying to help France, but maybe a little bit. So they're deeply concerned, especially about UK and Germany and a little bit Italy. And that's a very good sign because America and Europe are inherently interlinked. America fundamentally needs Europe. That is my thesis. Because America is fundamentally European. And if it loses its European heritage and connection, it's gone. And Europe needs America in the same way, but in for different reasons. America brings in the energy, the optimism, the dynamism. Europe brings in the heritage and the identity that America needs. These two need each other, and it's not a competition. If America goes down, Europe goes down. If Europe goes down, America goes down. They have to become one. And I think that's also something we are really, working on in Pioneer Lands to bring that optimism to Europe and bring that civilization back to Europe and America. And so I think he's right saying that we need this example of a great optimist from Europe, because Europe can then do certain things America cannot do. And opening up Europe to that American spirit, because there's things America and the American spirit can do that Europeans struggle with. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. So I think they're right about this. It's very interesting. But where Elon is a little bit weak on, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big Elon fan. I think he's very smart and he can't do everything. But Elon is weak on civilizational theory and civilizational engineering. Now, let me explain. Some people think civilizational engineering is X and free speech. They think it's AI. They think it's rockets. No, these are technical engineering feats. These are engineering feats that affect the physical world and how we manipulate and change the physical worlds, the atoms of the universe, and maybe the information flow. Civilizational technologies are how we live together. It's our education, the content of our culture. It's about the governance systems of the humans. It's the economic structure. These are civilizational technologies, and in our time, for some reason, we have forgotten the art of engineering reality in that sphere, in the civilizational sphere. Right? Today, we only have smart people in technical, mechanical, and AI engineering. We don't have good, smart people anymore in civilizational engineering, but we used to have them. Let me ask you, what's more important? What was more important about the Mayflower, about America? Was it the Mayflower? Was it the physical engineering capability to build the ships and get to America and then build the first colony? Or was it the civilizational technologies to form the first Continental Congress, to write and formulate the Declaration of Independence, and then to formulate the Constitution? I would argue that while the physical technologies were important and were necessary to go to America, they were not decisive, because these technologies also brought us to South America, to India, to other places. But the special thing about America was not the physical transport technologies similar to the ones that bring us to Mars that Elon is working on. We will hear about this in a second here. But they are secondary to the most important ones. These are the civilizational technologies, and we have to relearn that. And that's what we are spearheading in Pioneerlands. That we say we need to think about the structure of society. We need to think about education, content, and structure. We need to think about governance. We have to think about economics and sociology. These are all things that most smart people don't like because they're occupied today by people who have no idea about these things. But that doesn't mean these aren't important subjects. These are super important. These are the most important subjects, the highest value creation topics and sciences that ever existed. We just have to relearn how to use them and how to truly engineer value out of it. So when Elon says we need a religion or a cohesive philosophy, I 100% agree. But when he says that philosophy or religion is curiosity, that's kind of a joke, Elon. That's like not thinking it through. That's like me saying, oh, we need to go to Mars, and I have a genius idea. We need a cool rocket. Elon would laugh at me because he says, dude, duh, but what is the rocket? You have to build the rocket. And he would be totally right. I am also right in laughing at Elon a little bit, say curiosity, that's your answer. Are you aware that a cohesive philosophy is as much work or more than building Starship? And it is full on an engineering problem. But an engineering problem in logic and civilizational components and sociology and theories and technologies, how we live together and how we actually govern ourselves. We need to have smart brains on this, and that's exactly what we are doing. So let's listen a little bit more, because they're actually going into that topic with space and with Mars, which is very interesting.
There are parts of the moon that are perhaps older than parts of Earth. And we might understand more about the nature of the universe if we had a science base on the moon.
Yeah.
That would be very cool. And then we also want to go beyond the moon to Mars and build a self-sustaining city on Mars. I do think that that there is a fork in the road of human destiny where if we can establish a self-sustaining city on Mars, with the key test being if the resupply ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, does Mars continue to prosper or does it die out? At the point at which Mars is able to prosper and grow on its own, the probable lifespan of consciousness is dramatically greater because we are no longer dependent on everything going right on Earth. You know, there's always some possibility of self-annihilation on Earth with the World War III or a super virus or a meteor like that destroyed the dinosaurs. We know from the fossil record that there've been many mass extinction events. So the question that I sort of am always wondering about is, will the civilizational arc continue to ascend such that we can make Mars self-sustaining before the civilizational arc descends? Because the window of opportunity to make life multiplanetary exists now for the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth.
Yeah. Elon, let's assume that we get there and you're there. You'd be the elder statesman. You'd have the moral authority of Mars. How do you run Mars?
But there's this point that I think I want to just emphasize again that it's more important than the form of governance on Mars or who's there in the early days. What really matters is that Mars is self-sustaining, that we are truly a multi-planet species, and such that we've achieved planetary redundancy. So that if something, and obviously we should do everything possible to make sure life on Earth is great, but there's always some risk of an annihilation event on Earth.
Yeah.
Like I said, self-annihilation or some natural disaster. And so the probable lifespan of consciousness increases dramatically as soon as we are a multi-planet species with the key test being, can Mars survive if the resupply ships stop coming? So getting, like, the first missions to Mars are not that important. What matters is, can you get sufficient tonnage to Mars such that Mars can prosper on its own? And that means it has to have all of the ingredients of civilization. It's not just that you need to build, for example, a chip factory on Mars or chip fab on Mars, but you need the ability to build chip fabs.
Do you have a sense of the time scale? Like, let's assume Starship is at a state starting in 2026, then there's going to be a bunch of testing. Obviously, there's going to be a.
Before we get to the time scale, let me repeat this. What we hear from Elon is very, very important, because it showcases you. It shows very clearly what the weakness, the hole in Elon's plan is. And again, I'm not criticizing Elon. It's very good that he is zero focused, super focused on his part of the equation, which is to allow us to build all that stuff, the technical problem. That's Elon's job, and he's super focused on it. But it reveals that we cannot rely on Elon to save all of us, and that we need to jump into that gap and fill it. When Elon is asked, how is Mars governed? He basically discounts it and says, this is not important. What is important is that we can build chip fabs and that we can resupply it and that we have the capability to build them on Mars. Everything he says here is absolutely correct, except that the fact that he completely ignores the core of the question, what is the governance system? How do the humans govern themselves? That he doesn't see that as something he has to solve, of course, means he has zero chance of ever achieving this unless we solve it ourselves. Because the art of governance, the art of civilization, is an engineering problem in itself that is at least as big as the engineering problems Elon is working on. It is fundamentally non-trivial how we answer the question, how do we build a civilization that can even survive without killing itself? If you do everything Elon says, and then you have a communist dictatorship and everyone gets shot on Mars, you achieved nothing. You do not have a multiplanetary species. And my thesis is, on Earth, we have not solved certain questions. And if we don't solve them, we will never become a multiplanetary species. Before we become a multiplanetary species, we have to become a planetary species that can survive the age of ASI, that can self-govern and create stable, prospering societies, which we to this day have not figured out. We are still in the cycles of civilization, where civilizations rise, become decadent and stupid, and then fall, and another eats it. That is not sustainable. You cannot do that anymore in the age of AGI, in the age of ASI, because every single civilizational failure means the extinction of humans now. We cannot have cycles anymore. We need to have a perpetually successful and stable civilization, which has never been achieved in the history of humanity. But now we have to achieve it, or ASI will destroy us. That is the mission of Pioneerlands, to develop that second piece of the equation. Elon and some other smart people developed the first piece, which is physical, material, atoms technology, AI, robots, manufacturing, energy. But we need to develop the other side of the equation, civilizational technologies, education, healthcare, governance, capital. They all don't really exist today. These are total failures, these systems. We need to reinvent them like engineers and then merge them with the Elon Musk world. Then we will succeed. Ignoring this, and Elon shows here that he's absolutely not working on these problems. Also, he can't. I cannot do what he does. He cannot do what we do because he's not that interested in it. But he will understand. He's a smart cookie. He will understand how important it is once we have it. So that being said, The people who worked on this before, by the way, are very famous people. It's Jefferson, it's Washington, it's John Locke, it's Adam Smith. These are not dummies. These are non-trivial problems that need to be solved. So let's listen what he says about the timeline of Mars, because it's fun to listen.
Bunch of early testing. We only have certain launch windows. So there's a bunch of time constraints. Is this a 50-year thing in your mind? Is it a 150-year thing? Is it something that is for our generation, or is it our children's generation? Where do you see that point if it's optimally possible? If things go and break our way.
I think it can be done in 30 years.
Wow.
So if provided there's an exponential increase in the tonnage to Mars with each successive Mars transfer window, which is every 2 years. So every 2 years the planets align and you can transfer to Mars. So I think in roughly 15, but maybe as few as 10, but 10 to 15-ish Mars transfer windows, if you're seeing exponential increases in the tonnage to Mars with each Mars transfer window, then it should be possible to make Mars self-sustaining in about, call it roughly 25 years.
Amazing.
That's Elon's message. That is the amazing piece he's working on. Let's make sure we are building the civilization that plugs into this whole Mars situation, and before that plugs into the Earth situation. We need to fix certain things. We need to achieve stability and prosperity in the age of AGI. It's not going to be easy, but we are going to do it. No one else is doing it right now. And it's the most important thing outside the physical re-engineering of the world that we can do. I hope that was interesting. Go to pioneerlands.net to see more. We are building the Pioneer operating system for that civilization as we speak. You can sign up and see cool stuff. I hope to see you then.